likes of Rhea Ripley and Nia Jax openly harking for the return of intergender matches, we here at Cultaholic thought we would take a trip down memory lane and examine some of the most notable times that a male WWE superstar took on his contemporary from the fairer sex. Whether you miss man versus woman matches or are happy to see them confined to the past, there are plenty of intriguing examples of how they can be thoroughly sports entertaining, from storyline-based gimmick bouts to genuinely competitive matches. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 wildest WWE intergender matches. Join us! Number 10, Team Extreme vs Test, Albert and Trish Stratus at Fully Loaded 2000. The celebrated rivalry between Trish Stratus and Lita began in the summer of 2000 and also roped in the Hardys and TNA. The six-person dispute led to an intergender tag match which kicked off Fully Loaded, the first pay-per-view outing for either Lita or Trish. Despite their inexperience, the future Hall of Famers played their parts perfectly and the crowds came unglued whenever either woman was in the ring. It was Lita who was really the star of the show, and the highlight of the match was a sequence where she hit Test with a tornado DDT, then nailed Albert with a dive from the top rope to the outside, then hit Test with a top rope diving Hurricane Rana back inside the ring. Test responded by planting her with a vicious gut-wrench powerbomb. Chivalry in action right there. That was Trish's cue to come in and pick the bones, but her plot backfired and she ended up tasting defeat following a top rope superplex and a moonsault. Sore loser Albert hit the Team Extreme member with a clothesline to the back of her head after the match, at which point a gnarly beatdown of all three babyfaces commenced. Number 9, Jacqueline vs Chavo Guerrero at Judgment Day 2004. Jacqueline Moore wrote her name into the WWE history books when she answered Chavo Guerrero's open challenge and beat him to win the Cruiserweight title on the May 6, 2004 edition of SmackDown. The tough Texan shrugged off the champ's mocking pre-match promo and, after a well-placed low blow, was able to roll him up and bag the gold. Chavo would receive his rematch at Judgment Day, only he would have to compete with one arm tied behind his back. This stipulation doesn't typically lend to high match quality, but at least there was a built-in story for them to work with. It was, needless to say, quite a gimmicky affair, but they worked it as best they could, and there were some pretty stiff shots thrown both ways. In the end, Chavo Classic sneakily untied his son's hand, freeing it up so that he could hit the gory bomb and regain his belt. Interestingly, this was actually Moore's final WWE match before she was released. The Hall of Famer finally returned as a one-off as a surprise participant in the Women's Royal Rumble almost 14 years later. Number 8, Becky Lynch vs James Ellsworth on SmackDown. Say what you want about James Ellsworth, and I really mean/encourage that, but the chinless chancer really made quite the WWE career for himself on the back of one pre-match promo. From working with WWE champion AJ Styles and Dean Ambrose to getting paired up with Carmella, Ellsworth's extended run also included a big SmackDown showdown with Becky Lynch in 2017. Setting out to prove that he was the better man against the man, Ellsworth got an early trip and an arm drag in, but it was pretty much all downhill from there. Becky soon took control and took her opponent for a spin around the ring before throwing him to the outside and then hitting a lovely top rope front dropkick back inside. Ellsworth thought he had turned the tide at one point, but no chin music failed to connect and he was promptly put to bed with the disarmer. Adding to his woes, Carmella severed their relationship with a super kick after the match as the rest of the SmackDown women's locker room looked on and laughed. Number 7, Nidia vs Jamie Noble at No Way Out 2004. After Nidia was blinded by Tajiri's Black Mist, God I love pro wrestling, Jamie Noble took to using his Trailer Park Queen as a human shield. This naturally led to their inevitable and very acrimonious breakup. And since this is WWE, their breakup of course resulted in a match, but not just any old match. Because SmackDown General Manager Teddy Long felt it was only fair that Noble experienced the same pain of his ex and ordered him to wrestle blindfolded. Nidia took full advantage of this advantage from the get-go, nailing him with a slap, a leg trip, a drop kick, and a couple of good old-fashioned boots up the jacksie. The Tough Enough winner continued to stay on top with a classic pantsing bulldog and head scissors scissors trifecta, sending Noble to the outside. To be honest, the match was basically all Nidia until Noble capitalized on some lax officiating by Charles Robinson, if that is his real name, temporarily removed the hood, chucked Nidia off the top rope, and made her submit to a guillotine choke. The majority of the contest was played for laughs, but that finish was genuinely vicious. Number 6, Lita vs Dean Malenko on Raw. As the Radicals feuded with Team Extreme in late 2000, Dean Malenko, at that time in the middle of his James Bond ladies man phase, developed an unhealthy obsession with Lita. She continually rebuked his advances until the Iceman decided to offer her a shot at his light heavyweight title. There was a caveat, of course. If he beat Lita, she would have to finally go on a date with him. What's so wild about their first singles match on Raw is that the Iceman wrestled it just like he would any other. He slams Lita down and throws punches and kicks, while she comes back with her trademark high-flying offense, including head scissors, arm drags, and a suicide dive. It's a short, spirited, and physical affair with some believable near falls, including Lita almost getting the 3 following a moonsault. In the end, Malenko countered a diving Hurricane Rana into a powerbomb and slapped on the Texas Cloverleaf to secure his date via submission. The two would meet again on the February 19th, 2001 edition of Raw, with Lita scoring the upset thanks to interference from a very horny Matt Hardy. Number 5, Chyna vs Jeff Jarrett at No Mercy 1999. While fans may have had a hard time suspending disbelief when some women took on the men in WWE rings during the Attitude Era, that certainly wasn't a problem when the 9th wonder of the world stepped through the ropes. With a chiseled physique and imposing demeanor, Chyna had no issues squaring up to even the very top stars at the time, including Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H. Chyna began feuding with proud misogynist Jeff Jarrett in the fall of 1999, the first woman to ever enter the Men's Royal Rumble, taking umbrage with his belief that women belonged in the kitchen, not the wrestling ring. This led to a thoroughly entertaining Good Housekeeping match at No Mercy, where household objects were placed at ringside for the combatants to use. Pies, bags of flour, a toilet, and even the kitchen sink itself were utilized. Double J thought he had retained, but the referee overturned his victory because the title belt he used to score the pin was not a household item. Jarrett's own guitar was deemed to be within the scope of those parameters, however, and Chyna used it to become the first and thus far only female Intercontinental Champion ever. Number 4, Chris Jericho and Christian vs Lita and Trish Stratus at Armageddon 2003. Chauvinism was rampant on Raw during the Ruthless Aggression era, with General Manager Eric Bischoff setting the tone with stunts like HLA, his 3-minute warnings, and an incessant appetite for clothes-ripping matches. It was no surprise then when he booked a Battle of the Sexes for Armageddon 2003. Chris Jericho and Christian had dropped themselves right in it when it was exposed that their romancing of Trish Stratus and Lita was sparked by a bet over who could bed their prospect first. But Y2J had actually developed feelings for Trish, hadn't we all, mate, by the time they squared off and didn't want to fight. Stratus did mind, and Jericho's strategy of spanking her while yelling "calm down" had quite the opposite effect. Captain Charisma was more than happy to scrap with the lasses and ended up getting headbutted by Lita for his troubles. From there, the men took over, only for Trish to make the comeback and almost win the match. And she would have gotten away with it too if that Christian wasn't such a glorious scumbag. A full-on, hard-hitting and expertly worked mixed match here, but what else would we expect from the lineup of talent involved? Number 3, Jazz vs Bubba Ray Dudley on Raw. The Dudley Boys really started getting over in WWE around the time Bubba Ray began giving the women on the roster a taste of his wood. Trish, Lita, Terry, Stacy Keibler, Molly Holly, hell, even Mae Young. They were all powerbombed through a table by that damn Dudley, and the crowd bloody loved it. Bubba's kink didn't scare then women's champion Jazz, who challenged him for the hardcore title on the April 29th, 2002 episode of Raw. Jazz had a record of fighting against men from her time in ECW, and she brought that same spirit here. Bubba tried to make a joke out of proceedings early on by literally making Jazz dance, but the laughter stopped when she kicked him square in the bully rays. Out came the plunder as Jazz blasted him with bin lids, and he responded by biting her on the backside, putting a bin on her head and peppering her with jabs and a bionic elbow. Bubba then pulled out his wood but was not able to follow through, happens to the best of us buddy, when Steven Richards ran in, hit him in the head with a guitar and capitalized on the 24/7 rule to walk away with the ramshackle strap. Number 2, Alexa Bliss versus Randy Orton at Fastlane 2021. To call the meeting between Alexa Bliss and Randy Orton from Fastlane 2021 a match might just be stretching things a little bit. Well, actually quite a lot. But the bell did ring and then, well, some things happened. Some very weird things. The fun began before Bliss even made her entrance, as the Viper began spewing up some black goo while he posed on the middle turnbuckle. One too many pints of Guinness the night before, eh, Randy? Alexa then made her way to the ring and summoned a wall of fire to keep Orton at bay. Orton, desperate to get his hands on Bliss, or at least soil her handbag, missed a blind charge and took a hard shoulder into the ring post. The mind games continued as the seemingly possessed former women's champion made a lighting rig fall from the ceiling and then launched a fireball at the Legend Killer's handsome mug. That was the cue for the Kentucky Fried Fiend to burst through the ring, hit Sister Abigail, and hand Bliss the easy win. WWE felt comfortable experimenting during the pandemic, and this intergender performance piece certainly was, different, to say the least. Number 1, Stephanie McMahon versus Mr. McMahon at No Mercy 2003. Given recent allegations against Vince McMahon, this entry has become distinctly uncomfortable to talk about, but the title of this video is 10 Wildest WWE Intergender Matches, and they do not get any wilder than this. In one of the strangest WWE bouts ever, Mr. McMahon took on his own daughter in an absolutely brutal I Quit bout at No Mercy 2003. In the weeks leading up to the big fight, the billion-dollar princess had been beaten up by A-Train and choked out by Brock Lesnar, setting the eerie tone for what was to follow. And while father and daughter worked out their Freudian differences in the ring, Linda McMahon and Vince's new favourite plaything Sable scrapped at ringside. At the time, it was pure sports entertainment, and the crowd were into every moment. Mental. Speaking of sadistic, how about that finish, with Vince trying to, I guess, murder Steph by choking her with a lead pipe? It was only when Mother threw in the towel for her second-born that he let go, with the long-suffering Linda getting thrown to the mat for her troubles. Given what has happened with Vince since, don't expect to see WWE rushing to replay this one anytime soon.